The First World War, often called the Great War, was a global conflict that engulfed Europe from 1914 to 1918. It was a war unlike any before it, marked by unprecedented carnage, technological advancements, and far-reaching consequences. The war pitted the Allied powers, led by France, Russia, and Great Britain, against the Central Powers of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. Over 4 long years, these nations clashed in a brutal struggle that reshaped the political and social landscape of the world. The world in 1914 was a tinderbox of tension, fueled by nationalism, imperial rivalries, and a complex web of alliances. When Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated in Sarajevo, it set off a chain reaction that plunged Europe into war. The assassination became the catalyst for a conflict that had been brewing for decades. The Great War was a global conflict, drawing in nations from across the globe. Colonies in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific were pulled into the conflict, providing resources, manpower, and battlegrounds. The United States, initially neutral, joined the war in 1917, tipping the balance in favor of the Allies. The First World War was a defining moment in modern history, leaving an indelible mark on the 20th century. Its legacy continues to shape our world today, reminding us of the devastating costs of conflict and the importance of international cooperation. In the years leading up to the First World War, Europe was a hotbed of political intrigue and military buildup. A complex web of alliances had emerged, binding nations together in a system that made it almost inevitable that a minor conflict could escalate into a major war. One of the most significant alliances was the Triple Entente, formed in 1907 between France, Russia, and Great Britain. This alliance was largely a reaction to the growing power of Germany, which had been rapidly expanding its military and industrial might. The Triple Entente aimed to counterbalance German influence and maintain the balance of power in Europe. On the other side stood the Triple Alliance, formed in 1882 between Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. This alliance, initially conceived by German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck as a way to isolate France, became a cornerstone of German foreign policy in the early 20th century. These alliances, while intended to deter aggression, ultimately served to magnify tensions and increase the likelihood of war. When Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia in 1914, following the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the alliance system kicked in, drawing the other great powers into the conflict. The tangled web of alliances meant that a relatively minor incident in the Balkans could quickly spiral out of control, dragging the entire continent into war. This system of interlocking alliances, designed to maintain peace, ultimately proved to be a recipe for disaster. On a sunny June day in 1914, a young Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip fired the shot that plunged Europe into war. The target was Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie. The assassination, which took place in Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia, sent shockwaves across the continent. The assassination was the culmination of years of simmering tensions between Austria-Hungary and Serbia. Austria-Hungary, a vast and ethnically diverse empire, was wary of Serbian nationalism, which it saw as a threat to its territorial integrity. Serbia, for its part, resented Austria-Hungary's dominance in the Balkans and sought to unite all Serbs under one flag. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand provided Austria-Hungary with the pretext it needed to crush Serbian nationalism once and for all. With the backing of Germany, Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum to Serbia, demanding a series of humiliating concessions. Serbia, unwilling to accept such terms, mobilized its army, setting the stage for war. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand was a pivotal moment in history. It was the spark that ignited the powder keg of European tensions, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to the outbreak of the First World War. Following Austria-Hungary's declaration of war on Serbia, the alliance system swung into action, drawing the great powers of Europe into the conflict. Germany, bound by its treaty obligations to Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia and France. Great Britain, obligated to defend Belgium's neutrality, declared war on Germany when German troops crossed into Belgian territory. Within a matter of weeks, Europe was engulfed in a war that would last for 4 long years. On one side stood the Central Powers Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. On the other side stood the Allied powers, France, Russia, Great Britain, and their allies. The war quickly bogged down into a stalemate on the Western Front, a line of trenches stretching from the English Channel to the Swiss border. On the Eastern Front, the war was more fluid, with vast armies clashing across the plains of Eastern Europe. The early months of the war were marked by a sense of optimism and national unity. Many believed that the war would be over by Christmas. However, as the war dragged on and the casualty lists grew longer, the initial enthusiasm gave way to disillusionment and despair. Section 5. Trenches and Technology, a New Kind of Warfare. The First World War witnessed the rise of a new kind of warfare characterized by trench warfare and the use of deadly new technologies. On the Western Front, both sides dug in, creating elaborate systems of trenches that stretched for hundreds of miles. The trenches were a miserable place to live and fight. Soldiers endured constant shelling, machine gun fire, and the ever-present threat of disease. Life in the trenches was a test of human endurance as soldiers faced unimaginable horrors on a daily basis. The First World War also saw the introduction of new technologies that would revolutionize warfare. Machine guns, poison gas, tanks, and airplanes all made their debut on the battlefield, increasing the lethality of combat and transforming the nature of war. The machine gun in particular had a devastating impact on the course of the war. Its ability to mow down attacking troops with ease led to the stalemate on the Western Front, as both sides found it almost impossible to break through the other's defenses. Section 6. Key battles. Turning points of the war. The First World War was marked by a series of bloody battles that left an enduring mark on history. These battles, often fought over small patches of ground, resulted in hundreds of thousands of casualties and shaped the course of the war. One of the most iconic battles of the war was the Battle of the Somme, which raged for over 4 months in 1916. The battle, which began with a massive British offensive, became a symbol of the futility and brutality of trench warfare. On the first day of the battle alone, the British army suffered over 57,000 casualties, making it the bloodiest day in British military history. Another key battle was the Battle of Verdun, fought between French and German forces in 1916. The battle, which lasted for almost 10 months, was one of the longest and most costly of the war. Both sides suffered hundreds of thousands of casualties in a battle that became a symbol of national determination and sacrifice. The Battle of Passchendaele, fought in the mud and rain of Flanders in 1917, was another example of the horrors of trench warfare. The battle, which resulted in heavy casualties for both sides, achieved little strategic gain and became synonymous with the futility of war. These battles, and countless others like them, left an indelible mark on the soldiers who fought in them and on the course of the war. They serve as a reminder of the human cost of conflict and the importance of striving for peace. Section 7. The World at War, Global Impacts. While the Western Front was the main theatre of war, the First World War was a truly global conflict with battles fought across the globe. The war had a profound impact on countries far from the battlefields of Europe, drawing in colonies and reshaping the global order. In the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire, allied with the Central Powers, fought against British and Russian forces. The war in the Middle East had far-reaching consequences, leading to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the redrawing of the map of the region. In Africa, colonial troops from across the continent were drawn into the conflict, fighting in battles from the deserts of North Africa to the jungles of East Africa. The war had a significant impact on African societies, accelerating the rise of nationalism and contributing to the eventual end of European colonialism. The war also had a profound impact on the United States. Initially neutral, the United States entered the war in 1917 on the side of the Allies, tipping the balance of power in their favor. The war transformed the United States into a global power, shaping its foreign policy for decades to come. Section 8. The End of an Era, Armistice and Aftermath. By 1918, after 4 long years of war, all sides were exhausted. The economies of Europe were in ruins and millions of soldiers and civilians had perished in the conflict. The war had reached a stalemate, with neither side able to achieve a decisive victory. On November 11, 1918, an armistice was signed between the warring nations, bringing an end to the hostilities. The armistice was greeted with relief and jubilation across the world as people celebrated the end of the bloodshed. The Paris Peace Conference, convened in 1919, was tasked with negotiating the terms of the peace treaties. The treaties, which were largely dictated by the victorious Allied powers, imposed harsh punishments on Germany and its allies. Germany was forced to accept responsibility for the war, cede territory and pay heavy reparations. The Treaty of Versailles, which officially ended the war between Germany and the Allied powers, was particularly controversial. Many Germans viewed the treaty as unjust and humiliating, and it is often cited as one of the factors that contributed to the rise of Adolf Hitler and the outbreak of the Second World War. To Section 9. Shaping the 20th Century, the war's long shadow. The First World War was a watershed moment in modern history, marking the end of an era and the beginning of a new world order. The war had a profound impact on the 20th century, shaping political, social, and economic developments for decades to come. The war led to the collapse of empires, the redrawing of national boundaries, and the rise of new ideologies. The Russian Revolution, which overthrew the Tsarist regime in 1917, was a direct consequence of the war, as was the rise of fascism in Italy and Germany. The war also had a profound impact on social and cultural attitudes. The unprecedented scale of death and destruction shattered the optimism of the pre-war era, leading to a sense of disillusionment and a loss of faith in traditional values. The First World War was a tragedy that left an enduring legacy on the world. It serves as a reminder of the devastating costs of conflict, the importance of international cooperation, and the need to strive for a more peaceful and just world. The lessons of the Great War are as relevant today as they were a century ago.